Welcome to the Mom Founders Table. Pull up a chair and join me every week as I become your thought partner and help you lead to create change. I'm your host, Kelsey Kenry, entrepreneur, millionaire mom of three, and strategic business coach for established mom entrepreneurs. Every week, you will get tactical guidance to apply to your business, leadership, and life that will help you further your true success while also being invited into a new way of thinking and being that creates true freedom. I'm here to call you out and call you up, so take a seat and let's begin. Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. And today is extra special because it's my second time recording with Jessica. We already recorded this episode. Somehow, part of it didn't record. So here we are again. And obviously the universe was like, you know what? You guys recorded a banging episode. Let's make it better. So we are back. I was like, I absolutely have to have her on the podcast. I hope that she can reschedule, and we made it happen. So first and foremost, thank you for being flexible and like doing this like a week later with me again.
No worries. It was such a juicy conversation. So I'm like down to get into it again.
I know. Okay, so let's kick things off by you just sharing with our listeners, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it?
Yeah, okay, I love that. So hi, I'm Dr. Jessica London. I am a doctor of physical therapy, but I specialize in pelvic health with specifically the pregnant, postpartum, and return to sport community. So I always say postpartum's forever. So even if you're 20 years postpartum and you still have some sort of pelvic floor or strength goals, that is definitely still our zone of genius. And why do I do it? I do it probably like most founders, especially mom founders, because I had my own pain point, my own story, and my own journey that led me to realize the absolute massive gap in maternal health care after you have a baby. And, you know, it was back in 2019 where I had my first baby, very unexpected planned cesarean birth, and was totally ready for some sort of rehab professional to round the room, and no one ever did. And so that was really when I noticed like mothers were just meant to figure out their own pelvic floor and core rehab on their own. And at the time I was in orthopedics and post-surgery and knew that that wasn't the way that we were meant to heal and recovery. And it made so much sense for me why mothers struggled so much postpartum, especially because their body is such a big piece to their recovery and well-being. So that's how I got my kickstart into, launching your postpartum PT and wellness. And now we are 100% virtual. So we can meet moms where they're at and be able to serve them anywhere around the world.
It's so good. It's so good. And once again, we've already talked about this, but how many times will I say that in this conversation? In our last conversation, we also talked about something that I really love about your business is that it was born from your story. And I think there's just so much more passion that goes into our work when we're like, I have experienced the pain from this. I know what it feels like to not be supported here, or to have this gap, or to have this obstacle. And I'm curious to know how, because you are somebody that experienced this gap in maternal health, how did that shape you starting in the early days? And how does that shape maybe the decisions or way you make decisions now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in the beginning, I was enraged. Like I was just really angry and frustrated and in sort of disbelief, because at the time I was practicing in orthopedics for 3 years prior and working with so many different types of clients that this happening to me was something not even on my radar. I was so ignorant to it even being a pain point and problem because I hadn't experienced it myself. Yeah. And I didn't have any friends that were moms yet, or I didn't really be in close contact with any new moms recovering. And so I just was sort of unaware. And I think that happens a lot, where we go through life very ignorant, unaware to big pain points and problems for specific communities. So after, obviously I'm a new mom myself. And so I'm going through my own transition of learning all of the things about becoming a mom and thinking I have one thing nailed. And then as soon as something, I think I got it nailed, then we have to pivot to the next thing, right? But for me, it was an evolution that actually happened over time. And so I initially purely started just posting on social media on our Instagram account, tips and tricks and education. And as I was evolving and pivoting from orthopedics to pelvic health specialty, and specifically working, learning myself with the pregnant postpartum population, healing myself and making that specialty pivot, I just started sharing just very genuinely and openly, and was also asking, did any other mom also feel like we just got kicked to the curb after having a baby? And it was astounding the amount of people that were raising their hand, me too, me too, me too. And that evolution truly just turned into a business. And I just, one foot in front of the other. We initially started off being a mobile pelvic floor therapy company where I would go to moms' homes, because a big mission for me was to meet moms where they're at. That's part of our mission statement, is meet moms where they're at. Because treating a mom is very different than treating a 50-year-old male or like a 25-year-old male, right? So moms are their own unique breed. They have their own unique struggles and day-to-day planning strategies that are needed. And so I started in person, and then that again evolved. It just continued to evolve. And what I did when I first started was very different than what I do now, almost 5 years in. May will be 5 years. And we've evolved with, the time of when the world shut down with the virus, and I evolved into virtual because there was a demand and people were asking for help. And so I had to slap something together and created something in the moment that could also help people virtually. And so, yeah, I think that it started off with like pain point, rage, anger, frustration. And then it really turned into, I'm going to do something about this. I'm not just going to be upset about it. Like, I'm actually going to change the narrative. And so then it was more action based. And then I just allowed myself to just keep evolving and pivoting as I went.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much good, just wholesomeness in like what you do and how you do it. And just like, you can feel just like how much it matters to you. And again, I just think that passion drives so much success. And something that you mentioned that I love is like your slogan of meet moms where they're at. And I think that like you calling attention to it is different, right? And I think there's a lot of like, you'll see on the internet, a lot of people arguing about like using their kids as an excuse, or like, mom business owners. And obviously as somebody that works with mom business owners, I'm like, yeah, I do that because it's different, right? Yeah. So similar to you of like, we don't have the same 24 hours that like a 25-year-old male has. We don't have the same biology in terms of our hormones and the things that dictate maybe like when we're not making decisions in certain parts of our cycle and things like that. And so I think that is something is like, it's becoming more normal to see that now, to where like, okay, you're a mom. So knowing that, here's how we want to move things around, whether it's me doing it for your business or you doing that for your health, right? And so when we're thinking about being moms, as you and I both are, you meet moms where they're at. And I think because we are moms, we have to pivot a lot, right? Example A, second recording of this podcast. But tell me a little bit more about how you think now, almost 5 years in, becoming a mom has actually made you better at business.
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of nailed it with, we don't have the same 24 hours in a day. Like right out of the gate, I had a kid when I started my business, and my youngest was 2. And I was, then a year later, I got pregnant with my second. And so these last 5 years of my business, I've been running it with kids under 6. And so the way that it's different for me is like, I don't have 12-hour working days that I can put in. I have to learn how to really streamline my time and protect my time and energy as much as I possibly can, and also learn how to delegate and lead quickly. That was something that I feel like might have been different for me than other business owners that I've talked about. I'm like, I didn't have 50, 60 hours a week to grind. Like I had to learn how to bring on team members that could also keep up and keep going with me as we were growing and as we were scaling, of course. And so I think it really made me value my time differently and prioritize my time differently and be really strategic in the way that not only I organized my day-to-day as a business owner, but also tried to create a business that fit into me being a mom as well. And I still wanted to pick up my kids at 3:30. And so I think it's really all about that too.
So what are some specific things that you do because like you're hitting on, I think a lot of times, especially in the women that I'm working with, a lot of them are feeling like, okay, I want to keep growing. I want to keep scaling. I want to earn more. But like they get so stuck in the idea because of the way that they've built it, being like, we've been grinding out here, right? Like, and that's how we built the foundation. And so what I think is interesting for you is that you actually built, like, you couldn't do that, right? And so I'm interested to hear from you. Like, you're obviously breaking the narrative, which is what I say all the time, that like you can earn more and work less. But what are specific things that you have done that, because you didn't have that time, like you mentioned, like learning how to hire, learning how to lead, learning how to delegate, being very like cognizant of your time. Are there any things for the woman who's listening right now who's like, okay, that sounds nice. How do I do that? How do I actually keep growing without like all of this, like leaving everything behind? Like, how do I keep growing without continuing to sacrifice myself or my health? Or how do I give myself permission to be present with my family without thinking the business is going to fall apart?
Yeah, that's a really hard question. I'm still figuring it out myself, to be honest with you, Kelsey. But I do think I've had a few things figured out in terms of getting really, really clear about what are my top personal, like life mom goals, right? And then also like what are my top clear non-negotiators in the business and like the biggest levers essentially that I need to pull. And sometimes that means like, what is the largest source of revenue that takes the least amount of time, and like sticking with that and scaling with that. Sometimes that means being able to pivot the way we do things and hire additional support staff when needed so that we can supplement that. That's part of the strategy. So it's so specific, but I think the biggest part for me in this piece is like, I know we have a team of 5, including me. Like, I know that I would not be where I'm at right now if I did not have the team members. It wouldn't even be possible. And part of that was me learning to let go of control. And I'm like probably like a self unlearned control freak in a way, where I like motherhood really cracked me open because I thought I had all this time and, you know, I wanted things done a certain way. And I think that's really what led to me end up having the 3-day labor and a C-section for my first birth. I really had to rewire my nervous system for safety. I had to know and learn that delegation was okay. And I had to learn trust, like in other people, to complete the role. And so those were things that were not easy for me, just to be transparent. Like, those are things that I've really had to learn over time. And I think it's crucial for any business owner that wants to scale. You can't only scale by yourself always, in my opinion. I think that you can get to a certain point until you can't go any further in that particular direction, possibly. And so for me, it was about really rewiring my belief patterns of what's possible and bringing on the right people at the right time that were going to be able to nourish and support the goals and growth without it impacting significantly my own motherhood journey.
Yeah. I mean, just clip and scene for sure. Like, everything that you said is so true, and just it's so, the word trust is just ringing in my ears right now, because I have found like my clients are typically anywhere from like 500,000 a year to like 5 million. So I've had people with teams of 2, I've had people with teams of 50, right? And at every single level, we are navigating them trying to figure out how to trust, because I swear that people think that because somebody has a bigger team, they know how to delegate. They don't. Or that they don't micromanage. They do. Like, and so I think when we start to peel back those layers, right? And I'm having these conversations with them and I'm like, okay, we have trust issues, right? Which many of us have from our circumstances, right? And so I think that's the biggest piece that I would love to hear you speak on, is like, you mentioned creating trust, and you mentioned like rewiring to allow yourself to receive support and make that feel safe for you. And I think that is, I'm a root issues person, and I don't like have time for the bullshit. So like when my client's like, oh, this is happening, I'm like, question, digging. Then I'm like, ding, found it. Like, that's how I work. So I think this is one of those root issues that a lot of people struggle with. So tell me, what have you done to help believe that you're worthy of being supported and help develop that trust so you could let things go.
Yeah. Yeah. I realized that trust is totally an inside job. We can't trust other people until we trust ourselves. Like straight up, that's what I learned is for me, like
Clip.
I had to, no, but it's true. Like I had to ask myself, like, do I have self-trust? And part of that self-trust is doing the thing that you say you're going to do. And I noticed this not really happening in business because I always showed up in business that way. Like it's so weird for me. I did do the things that I said I was going to do in business. I did show up in my business, but it was my personal life that I actually wasn't. It was my own health and wellness journey that I would put the business because I thought that that was a priority, that I then was like, wait, I really got to take care of myself and my well-being. Or it was other things in the home or the house or relationships that I started noticing, like, am I out of integrity here with, am I doing the thing that I said I was going to do? Because I feel like when we do the thing we say we're going to do, we end up building self-trust. And when we don't, even if it's subconscious, then we lack self-trust. And so when we lack self-trust in ourselves, it's really hard to extend trust in others.
I think we just became best friends. I think that's...
No, seriously, when are we getting coffee?
Like, we'll meet in the middle. It's fine. I mean, Texas is in the middle, but that's so far away. I feel like I'm like...
to my neck of the woods.
Like, so we need a side note conversation after this. When are we seeing each other? I literally cannot I'm just co-signing everything that you're saying, because if there's anything that I know, it's who we are outside of our business is the most impactful thing for our business. And if you do not do what you say you're going to do, then you don't believe what you're saying. And that is transferred into every single relationship that you have. And like what I understand, but also like feel like I'm screaming into a void sometimes, is that like taking care of yourself, right? Following through with your word to be present with your children or work out or not eat lunch at your desk. Like, I understand deeply the fear that comes along with that, especially when you are somebody who has built what you have built from it consuming your entire life. And so I know that fear is the thing that stops people from following through. What else in addition to that? If we're backing this up and we're thinking, okay, if we know that what we need to create is self-trust, and we create self-trust by keeping our promises to ourselves. Like, I will often tell clients, I'm like, I want you to picture yourself as a child, right? And I want you to picture that child coming up, or your child that you have. I want you to picture them coming up to you, asking you for something, you telling them that you're going to do it, and then you don't do it. And then you repeat that multiple times. What sort of relationship are we creating? And then that perspective will be like, okay, like we have to put things in perspective like that. So if we know that building self-trust can cure, if you will, a lot of the issues that we are facing with not being able to let go, and we know that letting go is how we scale, what are the other things beyond following through that you think that we should do or that you have personally done?
Yeah, be delusional, probably. Like, in a way, for me, it's like we have to have self-belief too, right? So like we can trust ourselves with the laundry, we can trust ourselves with our kids or the small day-to-day tasks. But I feel like the next step is like, okay, who's the next version of myself that I'm wanting to become? And do I actually believe that I am that person now? Can I be that person now? And I think for me, it's like pushing that boundary. Like I'm a bit of a boundary pusher. I'm a bit of a rebel. You kind of take me as someone who's maybe like that too. And yeah, it really
me
is.
Never.
Not you? No.
Couldn't be.
Yeah, it's like, and my daughter's like that too. And I'm like, oh, that's so funny when your kids start having little behaviors. You're like, oh, okay, something's coming up in me. She's just like me, right? But it really is about then believing in that next version of yourself before it's even real. Like, I feel like that is something that I am constantly doing. And sometimes I have to pause myself from doing that. I'm like, am I doing that too much? I just need to be more present, right? But I do feel like it's important to also live in like the delulu of like, it hasn't yet happened, but like, I'm so certain it actually already has. That's another piece to avoiding or to getting over fear, because you can't be afraid of something that already happened in your delusional mind, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I love this. Certainty is actually my word of the year for 2026. So just amazing. But I think too, there's so many studies have been done now around visualization. And I think that that's such a key component here too, is like, if we have the tactical action of like, okay, let's do what we say we're going to do, like go to the workout, like just do the thing. But then we also are meeting that with a reminder of like, this is part of the person that you're becoming. And so I think something else I would add is like visualizing the pieces, because if you just sit in visualization, I'm saying sit in visualization, like everybody's favorite thing is sitting still here. But like literally just like a few minutes in your day to see like, can you actually visualize yourself shutting your laptop to go to the workout? Can you visualize yourself like leaving your laptop in your office and not bringing it out with your family, or whatever the things are? And I think that's a key component. But I agree with you in that sometimes we're so stuck like in the day to day of putting one foot in front of another, especially with like multiple kids and all the things that happen in business. And so what are the things that you do to help keep you grounded, like in your practices and in your habits?
Yeah, I think that for me, like it's creating the white space in my calendar, even though it's really hard to do that as a high achiever. Like, as somebody who said, oh, I've got 2 hours, I'm going to finish that project. But I personally feel like I get the best clarity, the best downloads, like the best insight when I'm out for a walk in nature or I'm going to hot yoga. And it's not actually when I'm doing the work, it's actually outside of that. And I have been through seasons where it's like, okay, I'm in grind mode again for 3 months. Like this is, and we are going to go through seasons like that. And I think it's false to paint a fairy tale that it's not, right? I think there's seasons for that. And I've gone through seasons of really being in the work and one foot in front of the other. Where my schedule is packed and it is crazy. But I always notice during those times, I'm not as creative and I'm more stressed and I'm feeling like I'm a little more spirally. It's the times where I actually force myself to take 2 hours to be able to get quiet with myself, to be by myself. I'm also a projector, so I've learned that that's something that's also important for me in human design that I've recently learned, and it makes a whole lot of sense now. But it also is about making sure that we give ourselves the space and the time alone to not be in the business all of the time.
And there's nothing, I think that's one of those things that until you experience it, you don't truly know the impact. Like when I go on vacation, like my team is worried because they know that I'm coming back with 584 ideas. And so I think that like for most people taking the time to step away, they're like, but then I'm not getting stuff done. When the truth is that taking time to step away is where you get the most done, because those are like the big vision, the crazy ideas, the things that come through. Like when my clients come to my retreat, because I lead a retreat for all my private clients, and it's just like the information, the relationships, the insights, the perspective. It's life-changing for people, but most people won't even give themselves the opportunity because they're so afraid. And so I think if anything, like it's just reiterating that like it is what works. And I think that sometimes it's like starting small, right? Like going outside and taking a walk. I don't think there's anything, because I think there's a lot of like central nervous system stuff that comes up here of like, this feels so unsafe. And like, we're talking about changing our brain. I just did a podcast interview with my client, Gretchen, and she's a physical therapist for people with MS. And we were talking a lot about neuroplasticity and like rewiring our brain takes repetition and like change for our brain. Anytime we do something new, it's like, no, please stop. I don't want to do this. This is uncertain. And so I always tell people, I'm like, this is going to be uncomfortable. So expect discomfort. And then you're going to be right on the money of like, just do it anyways, even though it's uncomfortable. So I want to kind of take it back to, I think that like this piece of building trust, following through with our word, understanding there's going to be fear, knowing that like, okay, we do need to take some time away to give ourselves times to think and dream, practicing being delusional, visualizing. All of these are great tools that we should practice. But something that you mentioned before is like pivoting, right? And I think that 2025 was a year that a lot of people had a hard year, right? And a lot of people have had to pivot. And I myself, this is my 15th year in entrepreneurship. So I've had a few pivots as well. And I think it's fantastic. And I think pivoting is just a natural evolution that follows us. But I'm curious to know your experience with pivots and kind of how you've made the best of those situations and what happened. Like, how did you know it was time to pivot and what happened when you did?
Yeah, we talked about this on our last episode, but I want to bring it back to you because I think it's so important. So obviously, first pivot was from orthopedics to pelvic health. Second pivot was from mobile to 100% virtual. Third pivot was last year when we were like all uphill growth, 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 growth. And last year we had a hard year that really required pivoting. And because of the pivots and because I was able to stay composed enough essentially through the pressure cooker, like I feel like it was a rebuilding year in so many ways. And it was because we decided to pivot a few of the ways that we delivered our services. Looping back to what we were talking about earlier, actually, of like you can scale to a certain point until you realize like it's no longer either going to feel in alignment or something's going to break. And that's sort of what happened. It was kind of a combination maybe of the two. And also me getting really clear on what I see for my team in future. And so I love how you're like, I have clients that have 2 members on their team and 500. And I'm like, yeah, 5 feels pretty good to me. Like I'm feeling pretty solid with that amount of team members. So because I'm not willing to build a 10-person team, that is going to change the way that we do business in some ways and the way that we scale in certain ways, because I still have the same impact desire to reach thousands and millions of women and mothers, but I'm not going to be able to do it in the same way as I have been doing it. And so that pivoting process took quite a few months for me to be able to build out a multiple tier offer support so that we could find other ways to be able to continue to support moms and to be able to continue to serve and support and make the impact we want on a larger scale, but also being really respectful of the team that I have and the size of the team that I have and what that also bleeds over and means into motherhood for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's so much stuff that happens behind the scenes, right? That people don't post about or show. And I don't think that, if I'm being honest, I don't think that everybody needs to like put all their dirty laundry on social media. I think that there's too many people that do that, just as many people that like lie about all the things they do. But I think there is something to recognizing the reality that in business, there's going to be a time where something that was working previously doesn't work anymore, right? And I think one of the coolest things about what you just said is like, instead of freaking out, maybe you're freaking out a little bit. All of us freak out a little bit, maybe initially too, right? But it really is like, let's go internal, right? Like let's actually get introspective here. Let's go back to the vision. Let's go back to the mission that we have. Let's ask some deeper questions. Let's get client feedback. Let's, really like focus on maybe doing some research and like those sorts of things that again are just like, people are so forward focused and goal oriented that they forget what makes the goals happen. And so I love that you probably now, would you look back on last year and say that probably those changes you made are what's going to create like your next level of growth?
Yes, absolutely. It was so hard in the moment. And those moments, those freak out moments, those happened throughout a series of 3 to 6 months, I would say, just on and off. And it was like, freak out moment. Okay, grounded, come back to myself. Freak out, come grounded, come back to myself. Right. But it really it needed to happen. And it's hard and it created pressure. But I do believe that through pressure, it actually created the transformation that's going to happen to be able to catapult, right? I really feel like that's what's going to happen.
And sometimes I think that we're just so short-sighted that when we're making decisions, we're not considering that. And for me, I'm like, I am playing the long game here. Like I'm 15 in, let's do another 15 or more. What do I need to be able to do that? And so what would you say, because especially being in women's health, right? What would you say we need to shift in either what we're doing or the way that we're operating or how we're leading to be able to become more like sustainability or longevity focused?
I think it's that step back. And transparently, I think I'm almost only 5 years in. And so I think I just learned that like the last 1 to 2 years of like, I have to
Mm.
step back sometimes and realize that I am building for the long game. It's not day to day, month to month. It's like, I need to be looking at quarterly, annually. I need to be looking at decade. And those are things that you learn from people like yourself, right? From people who've been in the business for a while, from people who've been doing the thing and have had multiple situations where they've been in a pressure cooker and gotten through it and then been able to like look back and see how much it's changed for them. And so for me, like in business, I would say that was probably the first time that that happened for me in business. However, when I look back in motherhood or as a woman, that makes so much sense when we take that step back. That can allow us to like, yeah, you got to take your foot off the gas pedal just for a second so you can see, or am I going to turn left or am I going to turn right? Am I keep going straight? Where am I going? And I think sometimes we can be so focused on like pushing the gas pedal down to go even faster and faster and faster and faster until we realize like, whoa, I'm a little out of control here. I'm not stabilized enough to be able to go to the next speed level or whatever, with my
Mm.
silly car analogy. It's just what's coming to me in the moment. But in a way, I had to take the gas pedal off. And it happened in not the ways that I planned, right? It was just the universe delivering the most craziest things at the most random times. And it just was a forced slowdown because I think that I wasn't quite recognizing myself that I was like going top speed with the gas pedal down and needed to restructure and reorientate. And so I
Mm.
needed to restabilize in that moment. So I think what I learned from that, and I think if anyone else is listening in this moment or just went through something like this, I've learned, retrospectively, it's okay to take the gas pedal off and look at the next quarter, look at the next year, and really think about how are we planning the next 3 years from now, the next 5 years, where do we want to go? Not just so in the moment.
Hmm. Yeah, which is like that really is just it. Like even just like backing up for a couple minutes. I have a question for you because when I'm teaching, so for me, when I'm working with my clients, we focus on them as the leader, right? And evolving them in their leadership communication mindset so that they can actually hold a bigger business, bigger mission, all of those things. But then on the tactical piece, my specialty is in the infrastructure. And so looking at their people that they have, the way that they're pricing, their customer journey, their offer suite, and then also in their processes, their behind the scenes. And when you said that like it was time to restructure, that is a lot of my clients when they come to me, that's what they recognize is like this current structure is not serving us the way it once did. And I know that like we need to change things. So I'm curious to know what was like the light bulb moment, or what was the thing when you're like, this is time for change, or the structure does need to change here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been primarily a one-on-one coaching model, and we will always. We love one-on-one services and support, and we believe that it gets the best transformation and the best result more than any course or app or anything ever will, in our opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've always built one-on-one. And so that was our only offer. That was the only way that we were able to service people. And so when I decided that I don't want to just keep hiring more and more coaches to be able to serve more and more women, and that was the way that we were basically had to grow. If I was going to continue to grow only in the one-on-one service model, that just means I need more pelvic floor therapists and more pelvic floor therapists and more pelvic floor therapists. I really wanted to create something that was more scalable and accessible, that it could reach a wider group of people. And it could also be able to scale over a period of time for those people who weren't really ready for one-on-one, or maybe they truly weren't in a financial position to be able to take that next step for one-on-one services. And now wasn't the time for them. Maybe later would be, but I didn't want them to go without resources and support. And so that's the pivot that we made and introduced it last year, was adding something that was a support service and product, but also that was not attached to one-on-one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think variance in an offer suite is necessity, right? Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, because I always say like, you need to make sure that you do like your profitability by service. So you know what is your most profitable. But if we think in terms of like, I always tell people, build your offer suite based upon like your customer journey. if you can meet someone earlier in their journey, and if you can keep them after you've solved their top level problem or whatever problem that they enter into, like you're helping the business, right? You're retaining people longer, you're able to bring on more people, but then you're also, helping more people and helping them for longer. So I love that you were able to introduce that. And I think it's really interesting because there's actually two questions that I have for you here, and you can answer whichever one first. But my first question is more in the direction of keeping quality of work as you scale. I think this is a huge mind fuck for people of like, in order to keep the quality and like the standard that we want, it needs to look like this. And if I shift things, that might break. My next question, so I'm curious to know how you keep the quality of your work as you're scaling. My second question is I operate from the place of customer service first. So I worked in hospitality. I believe that the easiest way to scale our business is by doing good business, doing what we say we're going to do. And so from that customer service lens, I'm interested to know if there's anything that you do that's different that really elevates your customer service. Those are my two questions. I'm sorry that my generator brain gave them both to you at the same time.
Okay, amazing. So customer service is huge for me too. So it's funny you have a history in hospitality, so do I. So I was like, I knew we would be besties too. So I got my actual degree before being a physical therapist in hotel restaurant management. And I worked in the hospitality industry. And so I also always am thinking about client journey, customer journey from the initial touch point to the last touch point. Like every single one of those moments truly do matter. And I really believe it's why we have such incredible results and transformations that happen in our community. I will literally back all of our coaches. They're so incredible. They're incredible at what they do and they get great results, but it's also because I've put so much time and attention and care to that client journey. With us, obviously right now, I'm still taking all inquiry calls and essentially vetting. It's my job, in my opinion, to be able to make sure I'm never onboarding a client that is truly not a good fit for us. Like it could be a personality fit, it could be a financial fit, it could be they're just not ready to take the next step in their healing journey of what it will actually take for them to get the results that they're looking for. And so I think that I've really protected that. And sometimes people, certain business coaches would say that's a bad idea, right? You can take more people, take more volume. And I'm like, that just never sat right with me. And so for me, just out of integrity, and I even tell this to people, I'm like, hey, out of integrity, we're going to do this pelvic health audit call. We don't take everyone that I talk to because I really want to make sure it's a good fit. And if I can't help you, then I will point you in the right direction for a better resource, support, whatever it might be. And I think that also goes a long way with them because then they genuinely know I do want the best in it for them. And I don't want to pigeon them into a specific, program that may not be a good fit for them. But that takes back and forth. That takes that deeper question asking, that takes that dialogue. And so I take that time with each individual person before we ever onboard them into our one-on-one, high touch program. So I think that's the first point. Second point is we have a pretty streamlined onboarding process in terms of efficiency of how we get people onboarded. I always find that the first 72 hours are the most important, right? So as soon as somebody literally hands you their credit card, maybe they're making a huge investment, it's super important to make them feel like they made a really good decision with that investment. And so the first 72 hours for me are the most important, quick response time, getting them the links they need to, getting them in the systems, getting them value right away and getting them into the back-end systems that they can start absorbing material if they want, even if we haven't even told them. They just feel like they got access to it. And I think that delivering quickly on the front end is really important to that journey, to them feeling like, okay, I made a good decision. And then after that, we obviously have with our one-on-one program, we have touch points and video calls and in-app access, a very structured schedule in terms of what the frequency and cadence is that we're touching base and setting those clear expectations of what they know to expect from us so that there isn't anything that's misunderstood. Because I think lack of clarity will also give people the ick, or it will give people not a good customer journey if they're confused or unclear of when their coach is going to reach out to them and how do they ask for feedback and how do they get support. And so we have an onboarding document that literally lays all of that out. And then on that initial call with our coaches, they're reviewing all of that again, just to make sure that from the very first touch point, expectations are very clear on how to get a hold of each other, what the next steps are and everything like that. And then I do a 4-week quality assurance check as well. So I basically pass them off to their incredibly expert one-on-one coaches that really take the reins with them from there. But I circle back around 4 weeks in. I think it's enough time where they've had a few sessions with their coach directly. They've, had a few weeks into the program, and I check in personally with them to make sure, how is it going? What are your wins? What are you confused about? Is there anything you're confused about? Do you need more support in anything specific? And I do think that a touch point outside of their coach can be really helpful, because sometimes they will say certain things that the coach is like, they never told me that, right? So I think that
Yeah.
having somebody else on the team, or at least me, the person who onboarded them, check in with them goes a really long way. In a like a very, almost summarize the client journey, but that's just the beginning. So we do all of that in the first 4 weeks. And then really after that is just continuing to deliver, and really making sure that at the end of their journey, they know clear next steps of like how to continue, or what the next steps are for continuation, if that's desirable, and what that looks like for them. So that's my answer for client journey.
I love it.
Okay,
I love it.
Your second question, remind me your second question.
Well, I think just to touch on that piece, I think it's just like, as I'm listening to you say that, I just like can feel in my heart like how successful you're going to be, just because you've built things that way. And I think, as silly as it is, like the bar has been set pretty low, unfortunately. And like, I really think that if we can just do what we say we're going to do as business owners, most times that will get a raving review for people, because people are unfortunately so used to being let down. And I find that a lot, like with my clients, because a lot of my clients have had previous coaches or something before, and they're just like, this is like nothing I've ever experienced. I didn't know that it was going to be like this in depth, or like this detailed, or like, because I just really care, and I think, I know not everybody's like that. But I think that like, as I'm listening to you, I can feel that like you really care. And I do think that that goes a long way. So my second question was, so you were talking about like the client journey, and like that really speaks to you. I think you almost answered like the whole question, but the secondary question to the customer service part was, how do you ensure like quality of delivery, like as you're scaling? And I think you kind of answered that as well when you went into, that 4-week check-in. But I assume that probably you're doing a lot of training when you onboard new PTs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it, is like, yesterday, so every month I have what's called my community mastermind call. So all of my private clients also like get access to each other. I think that's a cool bonus for them to have. And so yesterday on the call, we were actually discussing like how hard it is to let go of things. And we were talking about how we get so busy that like when things come to us, or questions are coming to us, that we just want to do it or fix it. And so like my motto is like, don't repeat, teach. And so anything that you find yourself having to repeat over and over again, that sounds like something that you should be teaching. And so taking the 5 minutes to record the loom, make the SOP, give direction will save you 500 minutes in the future. And so I'm curious to know if you have found anything like that in business that has really saved you time or energy, especially with building a team.
Well, absolutely. And I tell the exact same thing to our coaches. I'm like, if you're telling the same exact thing to your client and educating about a very specific part of the pelvic floor or this exercise or whatever it might be, I'm like, please just record yourself and add it to the library, because it is true, right? And it's also a resource that lives on forever, and you're creating that asset. But we have definitely created lots of little tiny things, where even just like text snippets and email templates and just little things that really allow us to be able to streamline the process for consistency as well, especially in more of the qualification process, like in the DMs, as we're talking to people back and forth to see even if it would be a good fit to take the next step. It's sort of streamlined in a sense. And so we can create those little more efficiencies by having little templates in a way that are always modified. But it allows us to be able to not think so hard in the moment, that everything really is like, I kind of need to know the same basic 4 to 5 questions. And how can I create more of a streamlined approach for that?
Mm-hmm. What is your biggest hope that you are able to achieve through your business?
That's such a good question. My biggest hope that I'm able to achieve through my business, I think first and foremost, I hope women know that there's options for them for healing. I think so many women deal with pelvic floor and core concerns like bladder leakage, prolapse, pelvic heaviness, pain with intimacy. Like they just put up with it and they just assume it to be normal and they don't question or they don't get a second opinion, or maybe they just take the generic basic advice that doctors give them and just tell them it's normal after you have babies or just do Kegels. And this is just such terrible advice. And so my biggest hope is that people actually know that there are really good quality professionals out there that can give you better support and better answers and can help you reverse these concerns. And it's not something to live with or tolerate. And that secondary hope for me is actually generational, because I believe that when women really step into their power in that way of taking back control over their body, that they do not pass that belief system or that pattern down to their children. And I think it's really easy for a mom to be able to put herself on the back burner constantly. And before you know it, she's been peeing her pants for 7 years. And then her daughter looks up at her and asks her why she does use a panty liner every day. She doesn't even know what to say. And so I think those little things that pass down to generations are actually the larger impact, is if we can teach women and mothers of like what's tolerable and what's not tolerable to live with and get their bodies back to baseline and know that that hope and healing is possible for them, then we're actually creating a ripple effect down to secondary generations and even further, since their children and their daughters will grow up knowing that, yeah, that's not normal. And my mom does take care of herself and she does prioritize her health and her healing. And I think that's a really important message we need to continue to share.
You're so good. It's so good. So what would you say to all the moms that are listening right now who are entrepreneurs, who are busy, who are peeing their pants, or they're having pelvic floor issues and their thought is, I'll handle that later, or I'm just too busy?
I think just first of all, it's not that hard to solve. Like I think that we sometimes make it harder than it is, and we want to believe that it's harder than it is. So my next thought is just start. Like just like the business project or just the thing that you think you have to do in your business, you really need to do it. It comes back to what we were talking about. Are you integrity? Asking yourself, like, are you integrity with yourself? And are you truly okay living in that state? And if that's your choice and that's how you love living your life, I think that's great. But if there's a part of that woman or mom who's like, I really hate it, it really actually affects my self-esteem, my confidence, it really makes me not comfortable in the bedroom, it really makes me not want to exercise, like, and dig really deep into like how they actually feel and sit with that, then there really is no other way other than to just solve it, right? And of course, we can help people 100% virtually. We literally were created to work with busy moms or busy professionals that didn't have time to drive to and from appointments. Our whole slogan and mission is meet moms where they're at. But what we find is that the clients that actually come to us the most are those that are really busy and don't have time to make one more appointment. And so it's much more convenient for them to be able to solve it 100% virtually, because I think the overwhelm can also stop people. The overwhelm of going to appointments and finding childcare and driving across town. And what's this person going to do? The overwhelm of not knowing what the appointment's going to be like. So if we can just eliminate the overwhelm and be like, it's very simple. We'll take you through it. Let us take care of you. You're so used to take care of everybody else. Let us just take care of you. You just have to take that next step and do it, is all.
I love how like so much of what you say are like things that I say, but like in my industry, because I'm like, just say yes and let me take care of you. Like, let me fix it. That's what I always say to people. I'm like, just hand me your dumpster fire and let me fix it. So I want you to tell everybody, where can they find you? What's the first step to working with you? If there's anything that you have for our listeners in terms of like a place to start or like your podcast, we can put all those links in the show notes too.
Okay. Yeah, you're the best. I appreciate you. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's at your postpartum PT. And like I said, postpartum's forever. So it's totally okay if you're 10, 15 years postpartum too. And you can, I'll drop a link if you want to book a pelvic health audit with me where I can get to know you, dive into the details, see if you may or may not be a good fit to work with us one-on-one. And then we also have like a more self-led option now that we introduced as well for moms that are just kind of in the look-see-loo stages and they're maybe not totally ready to work one-on-one, but they do want to take the next step. I can go ahead and hook you up with a link for that too. Our podcast is called What About Mom? And so I'm just now getting back to the swing of my podcast again in 2026. So you can find us over there as well.
Amazing. So before we hop off today, I do want to remind everybody listening that we do have upcoming City Girls dates. So City Girls is our business scaling workshop, as well as our private dinner series, specifically for women who are scaling to or past 7 figures. And when this episode releases, we will have done our first one already, which is only a couple weeks away right now, which is so crazy to think about. But we are going to be in New York, Charlotte, Atlanta, and DFW. So if you are near any of those areas or want to fly into any of those areas and have a nice tax deduction for business trip, you are welcome to join us. We are going to put all of Dr. Jess's links in the show notes, as well as the link to City Girls, so you could check out that event if you want to join us. And thank you for re-recording with me. Seriously, I feel like our episode was different today, but I'm just trusting it was exactly what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.